Before we begin, this episode refers to child sexual abuse. It contains strong language, and language some listeners may find offensive. It's important to keep a clear line between what journalists do and what the police do. We can dig, ask questions, find people, piece something together, hold people to account. But it's the police's job to solve the crime, to get a conviction. But with James Russell potentially back in the country, we can't risk him slipping through the fingers of Sussex police and being free to abuse again. So we approach them, telling them that we believe Russell may now be back in the country and asking whether they've spoken to him yet about the school abuse case and about Vishal. They say they'll get back to us, so we wait. This is in October. Autumn is beginning to set in. I'm Colin Campbell. From BBC Studios, this is Vishal. The story of a boy who went missing while the world looked the other way. The story of his family. And the story of our investigation into Vishal's disappearance. Chapter 9. The Man in the Tower. I'm keen to update Vishal's dad, his sister Mamta, and his brother Suchin about the developments. The family are cautious and understandably angry when they hear that I was able to do something that Sussex police should have done years ago and told them to their faces that they couldn't.
So is it fair to say that this person that you identified as a person of interest and you gave that name to the police, they said they would look into it in their own words, and you managed to find him, is it fair to say, with relative ease, whereas clearly they didn't?
I wouldn't say it was easy, but we did find him. And you're right, Sussex police said that they would try, and they didn't. So at the moment, we don't know exactly where he was on the day of the royal wedding. He does claim he went to India in 1981. Did he go to India after Vishal's murder? Was he there when Vishal was murdered? We don't know, but that is something that Sussex police really do now need to find out.
Beginning to take it for granted that the police, they have not really looked into this at all. It is a sorry state of affairs, and I don't know what to do about this. I'm very annoyed. I'm very upset that every time we come across such information, the trail goes back to zero. It always goes back to zero.
The hurt is made worse by hearing that Russell told me he has been receiving his UK pension each week and has been able to travel the world for decades on his own British passport that's been renewed multiple times, even after he fled the country following arrest.
I am absolutely appalled at the system. You know this guy is out there. You know how to find him. You know where he is because he's removing the money from the bank in Sri Lanka. If Colin can find him, the police can find him.
A month passes and still no update from Sussex police. I check online most days to see if there's been any news about James Russell being arrested or charged, but nothing. I'm assuming the police are putting their case together to finally offer the men who say Russell abused them as boys the belated chance to say this in court, and talking to him about Vishal's disappearance too. A second month ticks over. We're now in December. It's a long time since I was in James Russell's sweltering house in Sri Lanka at the height of summer, listening to his admissions and denials.
I took 3 kids off the street and I took them to my flat. They stayed overnight and I was charged with touching their leg.
I continue to investigate some of the other leads, and we wait. A few days before Christmas, as the team is winding things down for the break, I receive a text from my series producer Satyesh asking if I can talk.
I've just received a call from the production team. We'd sent an email to Sussex Police asking them what, if anything, have they done with Jim Russell since we learnt that he had returned to the UK from Sri Lanka. And a good number of weeks after we sent that email, we've now heard back from Sussex Police, and they have informed us that that they questioned Jim Russell about Vishal's abduction and murder, and he had nothing to add, nothing to say, and it seems they did not ask Russell about his possible offending at Muntham House, for which he fled from the UK. But it's the next bit of information that has left me in shock and upset, and that is Jim Russell died from natural causes two weeks ago. And that is terrible news, because this is a man who I believed had something to do with Vishal's abduction and murder, possibly. He's a man who admitted to me when I was in Sri Lanka that he had a thing for Asian boys. He's a paedophile who picked boys up in his car and took them back to his property. And he's a man who was visiting Nicholas Douglas in West Sussex and would have driven along that road where Vishal's body would have been left. So my head's spinning. We always knew this was a race against time. We knew that these were people who were on their last legs, and he has now died, and that is tragic. He'll take lots of secrets to the grave. I just can't believe, why did the police not track him down earlier? He was a person who they said that they were trying to find. It's just such a failing. They didn't do their job. It's simple. Because they said that they would try to track him down, and they didn't.
I have the sad task of letting Vishu and the family know that after all my work, James Russell is dead and a promising lead is gone. There's one other person who needs to know. The former pupil Mick, who told me he was abused multiple times by James Russell and who never saw those allegations go to trial because Russell fled the country. Earlier in the series, Mick showed immense courage and took me to that house in Kew where he said James Russell abused him back in 1981, in the hope that it might help my investigation into what happened to Vishal. And now I have to tell him Russell is dead.
You can't say that I'm broken-hearted. I couldn't be more relieved. There's one less set of hands to put all over children, isn't it? He ain't served no sentence for anything he's done, has he?
Not for what he did against you.
No.
Or other lads at Muntham.
Yeah.
We understand that Sussex Police had his address in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, but it wouldn't surprise me. Like I say, I think that they was just relieved to get it to an end. It went on for a long, long time from my reporting it at the start. It took, well, it seemed like forever. He's escaped.
And have Sussex Police been in contact with you at any stage over the last 20 years?
Nope.
I just walked in, knocked on the door and found him and spoke to him. And he'd been living there for at least 10, 15 years.
Well, if you can walk in there, surely to God they could have walked. I'm not being funny. He's one out of a set that's sitting out there and ain't served no justice, really, for what he's done.
You told me it was important to pursue him. I pursued him as best as I could.
Yep. And hats off to you for doing it. It's like I say, lots of people just fucking threw it to the wind and gave up. So, and he's in the right place now, isn't he?
Yeah.
I would have liked to seen him go to prison, but if he's dead, he can't, can he? It annoys you, but at the same time, like I said to you, the damage is done. I'm fucked up, and I always will be. You stay fucked up. It's the price you pay for it. That's the price you pay for it.
Talking to Mick reminds me that although I may not be able to deliver justice, what I can still do as a journalist is pay attention to things that have been overlooked and try to find the truth. There's one thread of this story that's always seemed maddeningly difficult to progress, and it's been sat on a corner of my whiteboard for months. Now, with justice proving so elusive, it's more important than ever to at least discover the truth. So the team and I decide to double down and see if we can find out more. Remember back in episode 6, the two brothers we're calling Amir and Kabir independently told me about a man they only ever knew as John, who'd been nicknamed Fat John. All they could recall was that he seemed to be employed as a driver to take boys back and forth between their family homes in West London and their boarding school in Sussex at weekends and holidays, and that he used those opportunities to aggressively sexually abuse them in his flat.
It ended up with him taking me to his place, and that happened a few times. And he would show me pictures of boys that he had tied up before.
He took me back and kept me for about another 2-3 hours at his. They took pictures of my genitalia and took pictures of me naked. Told me it was okay. I could describe you and I tell you exactly what he looks like, everything. He had a brother called Leo as well.
John did?
Yeah.
The guy who was driving?
Yeah. That's his older brother.
Fat John, as the boys called him, wasn't one of those put on trial and sent to jail for the abuse at the boarding school. This man has remained under the radar because he wasn't employed by the school. He was a driver the council used occasionally to take the kids to and from their visits home. No one else we've met connected to the school can remember him. But clearly, if we can work out who he is, it would be vitally important to find out where he was on the day of the royal wedding when Vishal disappeared. At the moment, I only have the word of Amir and Kabir, and the fragments they remember have given me very little to go on. Just the fact that he's overweight, he's Irish, he's called John, and we have a rough idea where in West London he lived back in the early 1980s, a place called Northolt. For months, we get stuck on Fat John's identity.
He used to pick me up from boarding school.
One day, when we're talking to Amir to see if he can recall anything else that might help track down this man, a tiny detail surfaces. A fleeting memory from childhood of going up in a lift with John to the 9th floor of a tall building. That's it. But it's a start. When we look for tower blocks in Northolt from that period, we can't find anything that fits the description. Actually, we can't find anything at all. The buildings in the rough area Amir identified are all low-rise and newer. On the off chance we get our researcher, Christian, to go and have a dig in the local reference library to look for a man called John who lived on the 9th floor of a tall building that doesn't seem to exist. And miraculously, he gets somewhere.
I had a name and I knew I was looking for a tall building potentially over 9 stories high, and nothing came up until I asked the archivist about buildings that were torn down between 1981 and 2022. And he provided me with a lot of photos from the time, and one of them in particular stood out to me. It was called Churchill Court. As I went through the records, I found 6 different Johns, but only one lived at the right floor on his own, and this John Harper lived at flat 44.
Now we've got something. Our producer, Jolyon, starts doing some online research on this John Harper.
So what I wanted to find out was he born in Ireland, and did he have a brother called Leo? And actually, it's not that hard to do now, because you can go to an online website where all the birth, death and marriage certificates are digitised. So I searched, and yeah, the man who Christian had as his top candidate was born in Ireland in 1929. And going back, it looks as though he had an older brother called Leo.
Is he still alive?
No, he's dead. 1999. So I ordered up the death certificate, and that gives a bit more information. It says that he was a bus driver, which is sort of in the ballpark, isn't it, for ferrying kids around. And he died of congestive cardiac failure, which I suppose is consistent with him being overweight. And it also gives the name of his sister, who was the one who certified his death. So that gives us a bit of a lead. So the next thing I did was to run his name, John Patrick Harper, through the local newspaper database. And Middlesex County Times, 16th of April 1971, man cleared of indecent assault. John Patrick Harper, aged 42, has been cleared for indecent assault on a 15-year-old boy. The offence supposedly was that he had taken indecent photographs of a boy. And that is exactly what Amir has told us was happening to him.
And this guy is of Irish origin.
Born in Ireland, yeah.
Living in the right place.
Yeah, in the flat that Christian found in Northolt.
It's hugely disappointing that Harper is dead, but there is a thread here that still feels worth pulling on. When I first met Amir and reported his allegations on the local news, Sussex police never followed up with him. He wanted to help, and he was left feeling like they didn't want to listen. But by unravelling his recollection of that tall building, we now potentially have another man moving between West London and the school in Sussex at the time Vishal disappeared, who tied up young Asian boys and who has seemingly never been looked at in relation to Vishal's case. It's vital to find out more about who Harper was and what he was doing at the time. This is Colin Campbell from BBC. So do you ever remember John Patrick Harper? What I'm trying to establish is... We keep on digging and find out that John Harper was from a large family. Your uncle, John, had anything to do with the case. Obviously he's dead. Which gives us a helpful range of people to contact. One relative confirms he worked as a bus driver, but that he also set up a taxi firm in northwest London. A few days later, they send me a photograph. And we suspect that Jack possibly drove them. For such a long time, this man was just a nickname, Fat John, and a distant, horrific memory for Amir and Kabir. Now, I was potentially looking at him. A few days later, we track down another member of the extended family. Jolyon gives her a call. She doesn't want to be identified, so we've replaced her voice here with an actor speaking her exact words. Jolyon starts by telling her about the background to Vishal's murder.
What age was that boy?
The boy was 8 at the time.
Good God. And they never found out anything?
The police, more or less, they tried very hard at the time, but, since then, it's a cold case, as dead can be.
That boy, was he sexually abused?
We have to assume that. We don't know that.
I would tell you this now, out of fairness and everything. John Harper was a gay paedophile.
How do you know that?
I know it. I know it because the police came to our house years and years ago in the early 70s. People had informed on him in London. The police went and asked people who lived near him whether he had sexually abused, and they all said no. But that's how it was back then.
That's interesting.
He was well known as a gay paedophile.
I didn't want to tell you something that you didn't know.
I know everything.
So let me tell you something you might not know. These boys, the two boys who we spoke to, they've never told this story before. So what he did, he took them to his flat, photographed them naked and tied up their genitals. We want to be able to sort of tell the boys that, you know, we believe them.
Oh, you can believe them all right. What you said about tying up the genitals, I've heard that in whispers. I heard it in whispers. I did.
As we talk to family members, we learn even more. That Harper used to work as a children's entertainer at a hotel on the Isle of Wight, and that he was convicted of a sexual offence whilst there. The information is confirmed by the owner of the hotel. We also hear that he had some murky connections in London's East End gangland. It's a lead, but it takes us nowhere. But overall, the picture we're building of John Harper and his movements in the early 1980s is compelling and leads to one big question. Could it really be a coincidence that one paedophile was driving boys to and from the boarding school in Sussex, while another man was organising a paedophile group at the same school and at the same time, and abusing some of the same children? And have the police missed it for all these years? I contact Nicholas Douglas again and ask him how pupil transportation worked at the school. He tells me there were sometimes escorts sent by the local authorities to drive the boys back and forth from their family homes in London. But when I ask if he got to know any of these escorts and if the name John Harper means anything to him, he says he knows nothing about him. He answers quickly, and I can't tell if I believe him or not. I need to somehow clarify whether there was at least a chance that these drivers would have had any interaction with staff at the school, and in particular, Nicholas Douglas. Amir and Kabir mentioned that their long-term social worker from Ealing Council, whose name was Graham, sometimes dropped them off at the school, and he may be able to help. After a lot of digging, we're able to locate him. He remembered the brothers well, and he agreed to meet me. Can you tell me how the transport to and from Muntham worked?
On many occasions, I would take them down there myself, but my memory is that I didn't tend to go and fetch them back, and we had an office driver, handyman, who could be tasked with doing that.
Can you remember what that person looked like?
My memory was that he was shortish, slightly rotund, thinning hair, white. I can't remember whether he was actually Irish, but he might have been.
Has anybody given you a description of this person?
No.
So this is the first time you've described this person since seeing him 40 years ago to anybody?
Yes.
I've got a photograph of the person who was, I think, driving. Can you just take a look at that image and just tell me if you recognise that person?
I think that's him.
I'm trying to find out if there's a link between the offenders who are convicted for abuse and John Harper, the driver. Because it seems almost too extraordinary for there to be a man who was abusing two boys of Indian heritage whilst driving them down to Muntham House, then a separate group of offenders who were operating at Muntham House.
Obviously, going down to pick up, you would spend time there. You would almost certainly get offered a cup of tea and a bun.
Relying on your expertise, having spent a lot of time in social work,
Do you think that it is possible that John Harper is unknown to this group of offenders in Sussex?
I think that would be stretching it to say that he's unknown to them. If he was picking kids up from that school, he would have met the members of staff, for sure. If he was a paedophile, then of course my experience would suggest that he would take the opportunity to ingratiate himself at the school and get to know the staff and so on and so forth, to try and get to know the kids and seize the opportunity. So I would have thought it'd be very likely that he would try and ingratiate himself, get to know, chat to, and so on.
Back in episode 5, Amir described to me being driven down to the school by Graham for the very first time, leaving the traffic of London and his family behind.
It was just trees. I remember one road where we went through where the trees actually met each other. And it was like, wow, what the hell is this, you know?
When the trial of Nicholas Douglas and his co-abusers happened many years later, Graham found out what the boys had suffered at the hands of people he had entrusted them to, who were supposed to keep them safe and offer them a new start away from their already difficult home lives.
Sad. It does make me sad. I'm not going to cover myself in guilt, but that the system didn't pick up that was going on. I'm also sad that neither of the boys felt able to tell anybody or hint at anybody about what was going on at the time. So it's awful sad to know that a whole system was in place where this could operate and the headmaster didn't notice and none of the kids said anything to anybody.
Just to be clear, Graham, there's been no blame pointed in your direction. They haven't said anything at all negative about their experience with you, other than they thought you were a caring social worker.
But clearly didn't have enough trust in me to think they should say anything.
Almost 2 years ago, Amir agreed to speak to me on a TV news interview about a man called John who drove him around when he was a boy and tied him up, violently abusing him multiple times before seemingly vanishing forever, in case it helped find Vishal's killer. Sussex police chose not to follow up with him, but now, as a result of the few fragments he could recall and some journalistic research, I think we're on the verge of identifying him. This could be enormous for Vishal's case, giving us a potential new suspect, but enormous too for Amir and Kabir to hear that we finally found the man who did this to them all those years ago. I print out a collection of 12 photos, like an identity parade. 11 are random men from images at the time, and 1 is of Harper. I go back to Amir. One winter's evening, we sit in my car on the outskirts of London, and I show him the photos. Just have a slowly look through them and tell me if you think any of them look like the person who you knew as John.
That one there.
Okay. You're pointing to a picture of the man we've identified as John Harper.
See him there?
Yeah. You're right.
And that's it. Yeah.
Sorry to put you through that, mate.
It's okay, it's alright. It's alright. Thank you, Colin. Really, really thank you. You don't know how important seeing that picture is to me right now. I'm all goosebumps and kind of warm adrenaline, kind of. I could run a mile right now. Because I always came to a conclusion that this would be a story No one would believe me.
I believed you from the start.
And you said the word Harper. When you said that, it actually rang a huge bell. Because I could never remember his surname, but I knew I'd heard it. I don't know what to say.
No, don't worry. I suppose what I've been thinking about is you bravely came forward and gave me that information.
I think you needed to.
2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And I gave that information that you gave me, and you agreed to talk to Sussex Police. But I spoke to the police. I gave them that information. I gave them the opportunity to speak to you a good year ago about this bit of information.
They still haven't spoken to me.
And they weren't bothered.
No. Again, I'm not surprised with these police, Colin. I'm not your little white girl that's been taken away from a holiday resort. You know what I mean? I'm not. You know?
Does it make you feel angry that the police didn't call you or bother to follow that up?
Yeah. My only concern was his connection with Vishal's case. I just thought if they were involved and these guys had some sort of connection, this would have been the fella that would have pushed it slightly over the edge.
Because he was you believed, a more dangerous paedophile?
Well, yeah, because he tied people. You know, I've seen pictures of boys tied up into almost like a embryonic kind of, thing, like curled up, and he's taken pictures of that. To him it was like, so imagine if he had done that to a child who's constantly frightened. You're going to tie him up a bit tight, innit? You know what I mean? And hurt him. And you think, well, I can't let him go now, can I? Can't.
After this positive identification from both Amir and the social worker Graham, I talk again to Vishal's family to let them know where I've finally got to. We have 2 witness accounts of him tying up Asian boys and photographing them naked. But the police haven't shown any interest in this man, even though we told them about him 2 years ago.
Has there ever been a time when Sussex Police has actually shown any interest?
Surely when they have a suspect of this kind and a charged suspect, they would have dug deeper. Everything that you have done comes to one conclusion. When it comes to Asian boys, they don't seem to care a shit. They just don't seem to care.
Why do they feel that they can circumvent their own regulations? The fact that a review should have been done every 2 years, and there has only been one over the past 40 years. It's absolutely unacceptable. They have forgotten about this little boy, died in a very painful way. My family has been torn apart by this incident. When are they going to wake up and do something?
I want to catch up with former detective Sean Keep, who started his distinguished police career on the day Vishal disappeared, and who, by paying close attention, played a vital role in finally securing convictions for the racist murder of teenager Stephen Lawrence after nearly 2 decades of police failure. Sean came to me with this information about Douglas's Vishal folder in the first place, frustrated at Sussex Police's decision to not progress this further. I want to ask him where he thinks we've got to now.
I think Fat John, and we now know his full name, is another fantastic opportunity. And he could be the perpetrator. He could be the murderer. It's something that our investigation has found that Sussex Police haven't. By pressing ahead and knocking on doors and talking to people, and the research that your people have done, you found another opportunity. And that's where I say you don't know until you look. We have uncovered more than sufficient information that could lead to great opportunities here. And that is where I don't believe Sussex Police have fully understood what opportunities exist. You cannot say that this is unsolvable until you've tried. And I don't think they've tried hard enough. And that may be because some of the officers engaged in making these decisions have perhaps not experienced a long-term cold case. And had I not experienced that, maybe I would have thought in the same way, because that has really changed my mind in terms of, hey, sometimes the passage of time is an ally, because allegiances change, people fall out with people mature and maybe think differently when they're older. And obviously, we've got greater capabilities around forensic opportunities now. But it's clear to me that Sussex Police made a grave error in the mid to late 90s in not linking the offending that became known at Muntham House with the murder of Vishal.
What's so frustrating is that there are still useful lines of inquiry the police could be pursuing. They could find out what car John Harper was driving in 1981, what car James Russell was driving. Do any of them match the descriptions given by witnesses? What exactly was John Harper's criminal record? Was he ever in prison with members of the abusers from the school group? Or did he meet Nicholas Douglas on his regular visits to the school? Was James Russell really abroad in 1981 as he claimed? He may be dead, but 3 others are still alive, for now, and their accounts of where they were on the royal wedding day need to be scrutinised and actively investigated. I talk finally to Jackie Moulton, the other distinguished former detective who's advised me in this case. She was at the heart of the investigation in the days after Vishal disappeared and has never forgotten him.
The main emotion that I feel is one of frustration. There is something here, albeit circumstantial, but at least they should nick them. They should nick them and have a chat, good old chat. People are getting older, witnesses are getting older, all of that kind of thing. So we haven't got that much time. Time is not on our side. I don't think any case is a lost cause, if I'm really honest, because people listening might remember something where witnesses may have been too frightened to say something years and years and years ago, but feel that they would have the confidence to say it. So I don't really believe in lost causes. So never give up, never give up.
Once upon a time, there was a prince who lived in a palace. He fell in love with a fair young maiden and he asked her to marry him.
On Wednesday the 29th of July 1981, Vishu, Mumta and Vishal went into central London to watch the fairy tale wedding, hoping to catch a glimpse of the prince and princess.
A summer's day, with the Queen and all the royal family, they drove in carriages through crowded streets to be wed at the church on the hill with their friends from many nations around them.
While the world watched, Vishal was taken. So much has changed since that moment, but the fact remains that Vishal's killer has not been caught. There's still time for a different outcome, for failures to be put right, for the person or people who did this to be identified, and for this painful chapter to be closed. But it needs to be taken seriously, and it needs to happen soon. We wanted Suchin to have the last word.
Dear Vishal, I'm sorry I never got to know you. But for as long as I've known about you, I've always felt like I've grown up in the shadow of your loss. For the longest time, you were always a concept to me, a distant relative, a tragic piece of history that I knew my family had been through, even if I hadn't fully comprehended it. Then came the storm of journalists and articles and drafting futile letters to the police, all of which made what happened somehow more real. I don't quite know what this series will achieve or what will come from it. What I do know is that through being a part of it, I've gotten to know you better, and I feel closer to you, and that can't, I think, be nothing. This journey has also made me realize just how much you've defined my life, who I am today, and how I was raised. I wish I'd gotten the chance to know you. I'm sorry this happened. I'm sorry it's been over 40 years and we still don't have answers. I'm sorry that our dad, sister, and your mother have gone through a lifetime of trauma as a result of losing you. I wish more of that was in our control. But there are things, I think, that are in our control. Like holding the police accountable for their shortcomings and most recently their indifference. We're still trying to do our best to get answers and seek justice for you, and we'll continue to do so. You won't be forgotten.
If you have any information, however minor, that you feel could help our investigation, please contact us confidentially at vishalpodcast@bbc.co.uk. In 2021, the Mehrotra family were told by Sussex Police that James Russell was yet to be traced, and that it had tasked its Force Intelligence Bureau to locate him. After we found James Russell, Sussex Police issued a statement. It said it had not been proportionate to send one of its own officers to Sri Lanka to find and question Russell. It said the evidential requirements to extradite him to the UK hadn't been met, so it had never been a viable option. They also said they were satisfied that their inquiries into possible connections between the school offenders and Vishal's murder had been thorough, and that they had found no grounds for further investigation, and they said they firmly refute that their inquiries have been hampered by institutional racism. 40 years on, Muntham House has been recognised as a centre of excellence for its work with young people with special educational needs, and is rated as an outstanding school. If you've been affected by child sexual abuse, help and support in the UK is available at bbc.co.uk/action line. If you're listening outside of the UK, please contact support organisations in your country.
Vishal is a BBC Studios podcast. It was presented by Colin Campbell and me, Suchin Mehrotra. The series was written and produced by Satyesh Manohar. The producer of this episode was Jolyon Jenkins. The executive producer was Alistair Jackson. Series audio production, sound design and original music by Steve Urquhart. Episode sound design and mix by Ali Adlington. Archive producer Helen Carr. Production manager Elena Boateng. Production coordinator Juliet Harvey. Production executive Laura Jordan Rowell. Creative director Georgia Mosley. The series was developed by Satyesh Manohar and Colin Campbell. Editorial consultants Jackie Moulton and Sean Keep. Legal advisors were Sarah McCall and Andrew Downey. Editorial policy advisors Matthew Eltringham and Kim Barrington. The archive in this series is from BBC Archive and Fremantle. Artwork is by Victoria Ford. With thanks to the Mehrotra family, Matthew Sharp, Tom MacDonald, Priscilla Parish, Cassian Harrison, Bushra Siddiq, Christian Demetto, Bina Kitani, Faraz Shokatali and his team, Kali Recording Studios in Mumbai, and Matti Sanford.